I stumbled inside. We sat at the kitchen table. I pushed across to him a pitcher of gin flavored with pineapple juice. And at this point, he shook his head and with a smile said, "Well, I'm not drinking just now." Well, this mystified and also disappointed me. I thought that he and I could retreat into the past. I knew that he had been threatened by commitment to an institution, and the same threat overhung me. So we were companions in misery, but he wasn't miserable at all. I couldn't understand it. Something had happened. So I said to him, "Ebby, what's got into you? Why won't you drink and talk about the good old days?" "Well," he said, "I'll put it to you in a few words. I've got religion." Well, that was a terrific blow to me. I just couldn't understand a man like Ebby getting religion. After all, I'd had one of these wonderful scientific trainings that had taught me that man evolved from the ooze, and that was it. So here was my friend. He'd got religion. Well, I knew I had to be polite, so I said, "Well, Ebby, could you tell me what brand this is?" Well, he wouldn't commit himself to saying it was a brand. He told of his association with the Oxford groups and how they emphasized getting honest with one another, with making a survey of their defects, admitting that they were powerless without the help of God. Cliches of that sort, they seemed to be then. And then he told how, when he had become willing to try these simple expedients and to try helping another without any thought of reward, he had been released, as he said, from this awful compulsion to drink. Well, his story made an impression on me. It was bound to, because after all, we were blood brothers under the skin, victims of the same malady. So what he had to say struck me deep. There was nothing new in the principles he advocated, but here he was living proof of their effectiveness. One alcoholic talking to another, forming the first link in the chain that has become Alcoholics Anonymous of today. Well, at this juncture, Lois came home and found us both there. I think she was dismayed at first, but she saw that at least Ebby was sober. So can you remember your reaction as you came down into the kitchen?
I wasn't entirely happy about the whole setup.
Well, my dear, you couldn't be blamed for that. I can't seem to remember what happened then. Ebby took his leave at some point, but in no waking hour in the days that followed could the memory of his face and what he had to say leave me. I kept returning to it again and again. The drinking went on, but not at such a heavy pace. Of course, I was nonplussed that he believed in God. The idea of getting honest with oneself, with other people, with helping others, that would all come easy. But that it was necessary for me to believe in God to achieve recovery from alcoholism, well, this just couldn't be. So, in a way, the first effect of his talk upon me was to deepen my dilemma. Perhaps I was within sight of salvation, but still unable to reach the other shore. And so my thinking went on, and so did the drinking. Until one morning, after Lois had left for the department store, where she was working to support me, I resolved to go back to see Dr. Silkworth at Towns Hospital, ask him to sober me up again, so that I could get a clear view of Ebby and his cure for drinking. I remember on the way buying a lot of beer, drinking most of it, coming into the hospital waving a bottle, shouting at the doctor that this time I had something. Well, this dear old man who really loved me shook his head sadly and said, "I guess you have. You'd better get upstairs and go to bed." So to bed I went. This time I was physically still in pretty good shape. The drinking hadn't got on long enough. So, in a matter of 2 or 3 days, I was well off the liquor, but still fearfully depressed, still in the grip of my awful dilemma. How was I to achieve a belief in God were that required to stop my drinking? I became more and more morose. I just couldn't see how this corner could be got around. At about 11 o'clock in the morning of the third day, my friend Ebby stood in the door. As before, bright and cheerful. I remember being a little suspicious of him. I thought perhaps this time he'd turn on the evangelical heat. But no, he was a prudent man. We chatted about everything excepting drinking. And it finally put me in the position of having to ask him again about those simple principles for recovery. This admitting you were hopeless, well, that wasn't too hard. This getting honest with yourself and another person, well, one could do that. This making restitution for harms done other people. A tough job, but certainly one would try that. Working with others without any demand for money or acclaim. Well, that would be just wonderful. But when he came to the God part, again, I remember a terrible balking